Welcome to Measurably Better Learning, the podcast built for learning and development professionals. Whether you're an instructional designer, L&D professional, or corporate leader, get ready for insights and ideas that will transform your approach to learning, training, and development. So let's dive in. Welcome, everyone, to the latest edition of the Measurably Better Learning podcast. I don't know why that's always such a mouthful for you to say.
Stumble over it.
But I did get it right that time. So I am joined today by my friend and colleague, Miriam Taylor. And Miriam, our topic for today is an interesting one. It is a highly discussed concept, and it's servant leader. So we've been doing, those of you who follow the podcast and articles and so on, we've been doing a series on learning leader as, and then fill in the blank, learning leader as curriculum manager and financial manager and so on. The topic for today is the learning leader as servant leader. And I did look this up because that original book, Servant Leader, has been in my head for a long time. I think as long as I've been an adult working in something, that book, and I looked it up. It was published in 1977, and it's now in its 25th edition.
Wow.
So learning leader as servant leader. The book was memorable and still quoted all over the place, and I know lots of people still hold it in very high regard, and the concept, try to live by it. So walk us through what you mean by that.
Yeah, I think servant leader really has to do, obviously, title, right? So is serving others, but it's focusing on, I'd say, empowering and uplifting others. And so that means trying to prioritize the growth and the well-being, as an L&D leader of three groups, really: the organization, the learners within the organization, and then my team. And that looks a little different, right? Yeah. Like how do I prioritize the growth and well-being of my team often looks different than the organization. Now, that doesn't mean they're in conflict, but
although they may be.
They could be, right? Yeah. And I think we'll unpack that throughout here. But to me, that felt like this servant leadership. I mean, like, to me, that's sort of a duh. Of course, like, why would we not lead like that? But there's a large portion of the world that may not function like that.
Yeah.
And I would say that we've been in this business for a long time.
Yeah.
By and large, we bump into very good people, people who do truly care. And I think it's a function of being in this industry. We want people to grow and learn. Yeah.
But it's not common in business by and large, unfortunately.
Right.
It's fairly common in small business.
I would agree, yeah.
The bigger the system becomes, the more complex it becomes. I think some find it the harder it is. And it's funny because, as you say, it's a little bit like duh.
Right.
Be a decent human being.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not natural to us. It's not, there's something in us that mitigates against it. And so to be a true servant leader, you need to have the well-being of other people in the forefront and not yourself. I mean, Simon sent
I was going to mention that.
Yeah, Simon got this wonderful book, right? Leaders Eat Last. And it's based on a military concept that the higher you up, higher you are in the hierarchy, the further behind in the chow line you are, which is really an interesting concept. But it's one of those things that no one intellectually disagrees with, but it's not put in practice as often as it should be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So when you're talking about different audiences, you've got, sort of smaller circles, right? You've got the learning team that you might lead, the little bit bigger, much bigger circle of the learners, and then you've got the organizations. The organization as a whole. How do you balance those things?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to address too, because that is one of the largest criticisms typically, right, of servant leadership as well. That might be fine for your small group, but that's going to you're going to miss meeting the organization's needs, or it's going to be too slow. And, we'll talk more about that. But You really do have to kind of have your eyes on all of those at once, which can be difficult, but I would say by starting with your team, your learning and development team, if you're prioritizing their growth,
Yeah.
really listening to not just needs on the team, but you know, people are doing work. They're making tangible learning experiences. You can see where their gifts and abilities are, and you can hear from them where they maybe want to go next.
Right.
I guess to me, like that's one of my favorite things to do is help somebody step into a new role or try a new project that stretches their goals and their abilities. And the reason I say start with your team is those are the people you see every day,
Mm-hmm.
the most opportunity to impact, but maybe this is a selfish reason, but they have also the ability to then help you better impact the learners in the organization if you and your small L&D team are all pulling together.
Yeah. Well, there's mutual benefit to that.
Agreed. Mm-hmm.
If you put the needs of somebody else first, will that bite you sometimes? Maybe, but probably not, and you should do it even if it does.
Right. There's a philosophical thing here too, right? What's morally right or not?
Decent human
Exactly.
being.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, when we come back, we'll maybe talk a little bit more about learning team, and then how you think about learners, and then how do you serve. But that core element of I'm on this earth to serve is a pretty beautiful and compelling vision. So we'll be right back.
Imagine a world where every training session, every learning module, and every translated document is aligned with your company's unique goals and global ambitions. Welcome to Ingenuity, where we don't just talk about elevating your corporate learning, we make it happen. At Ingenuity, we understand the heart of your business is its people. That's why we specialize in creating custom learning solutions and translation services that are not just effective, but are designed specifically for your business's global needs. Let us show you how learning cannot be just better, but measurably better, with solutions tailored just for you. Learn more in the description below.
All right, welcome back, everybody. So, Miriam, continuing in our conversation, you've described three groups. One is being a servant to the learning team itself, which is putting their needs above your own. And then the learners as another group of people that need to be served. And then the organization as a whole. Before we leave the learner, your learning team, and I really like your emphasis in two words that you said, if I see that they have some skills or I hear that they want to do something else, that means intuitively you're looking and you're listening. So seeing and hearing are tied to looking and listening. And I that jumped out at me, your comment right away. Like, it means that you're attentive to them. You know them. You're looking for, you're seeking. And when it's time to listen, you're listening.
Yeah. So way back in the day, too many years ago, but old school paper and pencil. I taught in a high school where a principal walked around. He had a note card in his pocket because, you get stopped all the time, and he gets stopped by teachers and students and whatever they had to say that required any action or thought, he jotted it on the note card instead of saying, yeah, walking away, and nothing was ever going to happen. At the end of the day, he took it out and he dealt with all those issues. So to me, honestly, as I sort of grew as a leader of a team, starting out with a few people, growing more and more and more, sometimes I would take notes, like what are their spouses' names? What are their children's names? What are they like? We had the great privilege of, I did working for you, an organization that really valued that.
Well, and I learned that from somebody else.
Yeah, right. But
I learned that from Bob Chapman.
Okay.
And Barry Wimler. I was texting with Bob earlier this morning. That man listens.
Yeah.
Just like when you're in the room talking to him, you're the only one, and he is thinking hard about what you're saying, and it's one of the most beautiful gifts I've ever received from another human being.
Exactly, and that's
what I heard.
Right, and I think that really, I know that really matters, and I did that in person.
Yeah.
But I will say now I work almost entirely remote. I still work really hard to do that. I watch faces on screens or like what are their surroundings look like. Anytime I'm not directly involved in production anymore, but we still see like, here's this file. I make an attempt to open every one of them and take a look at them. If I see something great, like just send on them, hey, that looked amazing. How'd you, And you hear other things too, right? We hear people, hobbies, other interests that sometimes, to me, I guess that was that greatest joy for me, is connecting.
Mm-hmm.
Like I remember one time you said this, we have this project or someone has this interest or a group needs help with this. You want to try and, like that's the way that I felt like I could serve them best.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And you hear great things when you are attentive. You said you texted me something last week that I'm still thinking about. I'm not done yet. So how do we expand this out to the learners? So how can you be a servant leader to learners in a large organization?
Yeah, there's a reason I started with the L&D team, right? Because if those people don't feel like they're working together and you're all pulling in the same direction, it's going to be a mess anyway.
Yeah.
But beyond that, then we do things, we call them, like, we do sort of a proprietary in-depth needs analysis. We do curriculum mapping. Those might sound like just processes, right? Meetings that we have. But what we're really doing is we're trying to hear again and see.
Structured listening.
Yes, from all of the stakeholders.
Mm.
What do my project owners need? What do the learners really need? What have pain points been? That helps us get a better, and learner profiles. We talk about it all the time, but it's so important.
Right.
Really honing in on what the learners need. And then, things we talked about in other podcasts, getting feedback, constantly improving. That's the best way. I feel like I can serve our learners, right?
Yeah. You have an expression I'm trying. I got it. It just
Okay.
came to me. The sage on the stage.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of us, no, I'm going to retract.
No,
that.
I get it.
Some of us in learning, right? And honestly, I've been on many stages, oftentimes can't even see people.
Yeah, that's tough.
You have lights in your face. You can't see how people react. You're the sage on the stage. You really know nothing. You're getting not even physical feedback. Like everybody fell asleep, right?
Right.
You have no idea. You're rejecting that out of hand if it's possible, because there's no you could have just phoned this in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and that's, I would say too, like the best way to tell your learners and the organization that you value them is to then make high quality products. Sometimes you're limited by budget, but with the best that you can do in the time allowed, show them that they have value because you produce the best quality learning experience they could have.
Well, let's move out to that outer circle a little bit. And, how do you serve the organization, which of course is made up of a bunch of people, but there is an entity. How do you serve the entity as a servant leader in the learning space? And I hope part of the answer is you push back when you need to push back, and you actually lead in a loving, kind, gracious way, but to battle on behalf of learners. Is that part of it?
It absolutely is. We've talked in the past about sort of changing the mindset. Learning leaders still sometimes feel like we need to ask for a seat at the table. No, we have a seat at the table, and it's our job to lead at the table.
Right.
And so if one of the ways that I serve the needs of the organization is as I'm looking, first of all, I shouldn't just be looking at our quarterly or yearly goals. I should be having a say in what those are. And then as those are being developed, I can say, here's how we can best serve you to meet the needs of the next goals. Have you thought about this? And then to ask the question, usually it's in a crisis situation, right? But is this truly a learning need? Let's make sure we're really solving the right problem. And like you said, sometimes that's a pushback. Sometimes
it's a little bit confrontational.
It can be. But again, I think if you have the right processes and the science behind you, then it's easier to say, like, let's look at these list of questions. And as we go through them, you start to see people say, oh, maybe
and the organization is relying on you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sometimes we're a little more passive than we to actually be a servant leader. Sometimes you have to be a bit more aggressive and say, wait, stop. This is wrong. This is the wrong thing to do.
Well, you're not really serving if you're an order taker.
Right.
They are relying on you to bring your expertise to create the best possible situation for the company and the learners. Yeah.
Good. All right. Well, we are out of time, Miriam. And again, fascinating discussion. This is one we could carry on for a long time, but more coming on this and articles and some other things. But Thanks again for sharing
Thank
your
you.
insights. Before we wrap up the show, if you're looking to dive deeper, we've got tons of free downloads, L&D resources, and details about upcoming webinars that you won't want to miss. They're found in the episode description. Plus, if you ever want to chat with either one of us, now's your chance. You can find links in the episode description to connect directly with Miriam or me. We're here to answer your questions and to discuss all things learning and development. And speaking of questions, we love hearing from you. Whether it's a question or a comment or a topic you're curious about, or if you just want to join the conversation, drop us a comment on your favorite social media channel. Your input shapes our shows. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform. It's the best way to ensure you never miss out on our latest episode. We're excited to continue to transform learning into a measurable success with you. Until next time.